Alright, well, we are going to start episode 3. So I'm just going to jump right into it. If you're just joining me for this series, I am kind of doing a dive into my commander collection, or rather the decks that I use, my roster, so to speak, and then ranking them based on where they sit in the scale of power in regards to my particular roster. So I've covered the 2 weakest decks so far, that being Devils the weakest and Soldiers the next weakest. And now I will be covering what I believe to be the next weakest, which is going to be... I'm like actively deciding on this one because I'm like having last second thoughts. I think it's gonna be Goblins. I hate that because I love Goblins, but I just think all the other ones are a little bit more powerful, so it irks it out just a little bit. So, got the red flip box, classic flip box, red mana symbol. Tend to keep pretty much all of my decks in flip boxes, at least as many of them as I can. So, the Goblin Commander is going to be a little bit of a surprise because you might think it'd be Franco, but we're going to go with Muxus. Goblins have a lot of ways to kind of like get some extra mana going, whether that be through Skirk Prospector or any other number of different means. That might actually be the only one, now that I think about it, but neither here nor there. But Muxus is kind of like a game ender. Like, if you get Muxus on the field, he kind of tends to just end it right there. Franco kind of takes time to build up, so opponents have time to answer him, and that's not good in Commander. Here's my Goblin token stack. This is probably the fattest stack of tokens that I have because this deck makes the most tokens. Maybe not the most, but it definitely gets up there. So we will just start jumping right in. First up, we've got Volley Veteran, a 4-drop red Goblin Warrior, 4/2. When Volley Veteran enters the battlefield, it deals damage to target creature an opponent controls equal to the number of goblins you control. So he's basically just a kill spell on a stick. You're probably going to have plenty of goblins by the time that you play him, and that will mean you do some serious damage. Forgotten Cave, it's just a basic ETB tapped red cycling land. We've got Goblin Oriflame. It's a 2-drop red enchantment. Attacking creatures you control get +1/+0. Very useful for goblins. Goblin Chain Whirler, the old whirler. 3-drop, all red. 3/3 first strike, Goblin Warrior. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature and planeswalker they control. Next up, we got Bloodmark Mentor, 2-drop, 1 red, Goblin Warrior. With red creatures you control have first strike with a body of 1/1. Next up, we have Goblin Charbelcher. It's a 4-drop artifact that states you pay 3 and tap it. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a land card. Goblin Charbelcher deals damage equal to the number of non-land cards revealed this way to target creature or player. If the revealed card was a mountain, Goblin Charbelcher deals double that damage instead. Put the revealed cards on the bottom of your library in any order. Quest for the Goblin Lord. It's a 1-drop red enchantment. Whenever a goblin enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a quest counter on Quest for the Goblin Lord. As long as Quest for the Goblin Lord has 5 or more quest counters on it, creatures you control get +2/+0. Very powerful card for goblins. Trumpet Blast. This is a 3-drop, 1 red instant. Attacking creatures get +2/+0 until end of turn. It's a combat trick, and in Commander that's pretty weak, honestly, but can come in handy. That could be a board wipe depending on how you use it. Goblin War Driver, 2-drop, both red. Goblin Warrior creature, 2/2 with Battle Cry. Battle Cry states, whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0. Kind of starting to see a trend here in powering up the goblins when they swing. Soul Ring, you know what it is, baby. Warren Instigator, 2-drop, double red. Goblin Berserker, 1/1 with double strike. Whenever Warren Instigator deals damage to an opponent, you may put a goblin creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. If he goes unblocked, he's going to trigger twice, which is super good. This is a fun card. Skirk Fire Marshal. It is a 5-drop double red goblin with 2/2 and protection from red. You tap 5 untapped goblins you control, and it deals 10 damage to each creature and each player. Now, since it has protection from red, it protects itself from its own ability. I've used this exactly 1 time, and it was basically just a glorious way for me to kill myself and deal 10 damage and board wipe pretty much everything. A very glamorous exit to the game. Next up we have Goblin Matron, probably one of the best cards in the deck. 3-drop, 1 red, goblin creature with 1/1. When she enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a goblin card, reveal that card, and put it into your hand and shuffle your library. Allows you to go grab one of the extra thicky boys and start doing some serious damage. Battle Squadron is kind of a unique one. It's a 5-drop double red goblin with flying. Power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control. Really crucial to dealing with the flyers that are going to be running rampant in Commander, such as angels, demons, and dragons. And we've got Empty the Warrens, 2-drop red, no, 4-drop red. 4-drop red sorcery. Create 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, and it has Storm. So when you cast a spell, you copy it for each spell cast before it this turn. Kind of doubt that you're ever really going to get a copy off of this, but you might get 1, maybe 2, depending on how you want to swing it. I can see a really fun play where, you know, potentially you maybe have a few goblins on the field, including Skirk Prospector, and then you use Franco and his ability and tap, generate a whole bunch of goblins, and then you can use Skirk Prospector to tap a bunch of those goblins, or not tap, sack them, to generate a bunch of mana, use that mana to cast a bunch of spells in your hand, and then finally finish it off by dropping Empty the Warrens and just unloading a bunch of goblins. And then maybe continuing to use Skirk Prospector to generate more mana and do more goofy things. Speaking of generating goblins, we've got a 5-drop in Goblin Rally. Sorcery, put 4 goblins on the field. Tokens. Goblin creature tokens. 1/1s. 4-drop, 2 red, Beetleback Chief, Goblin Warrior creature. with Tutu, and when Beetleback Chief enters the battlefield, put 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens onto the battlefield. Not terrible, pretty good. 2-drop red sorcery, Franco's Command, 2 red goblin tokens. One of my all-time favorite Magic cards, Raging Goblin, 1-drop red with haste, 1/1. Really wish they would print the arena art for this one, but I also do love the classic art. It's just so vivid and red and aggressive, and it just, honestly, this is red in Magic to me. This is Magic. And honestly, it's also the first Magic card I ever saw, so it's kind of got a special place in my heart. Goblin Trash Master. Can't see this card and not think of Danny DeVito. 4-drop red, double red. Goblin Warrior with 3/3, and other goblins you control get +1/+1, so he's a Lord, which is an automatic add to a Goblin tribal deck. Sacrifice a Goblin, destroy target artifact. Good utility, dealing with stuff like Soul Ring and other nonsense that you don't want to deal with. Goblin Grenade. It's a 1-drop sorcery red. As an additional cost, you have to sacrifice a Goblin, and it deals 5 damage to target creature or player. Raging Redcap. It's a 3-drop Goblin with double strike. It is a 1/2. It's a Goblin Knight as opposed to a Goblin Warrior, so that might come into play, maybe with like Coat of Arms or something like that. Oh, there he is. Franco Mob Boss. 4-drop, 2 red. Legendary creature Goblin Warrior, 3/3. You may tap him to create X 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, where X is the number of goblins you control. He gets stupid. He gets absolutely insane. In non-commander games, if you're running multiple copies of him, sheesh. I was playing a game on Arena just this morning, actually, and I had a match where a dude was playing a life gain deck, and he got up to 66. His board state was pretty impressive, and he seemed pretty confident that he had the game in the bag. With Franco, I was able to end up with 75 damage worth of goblins, and he just couldn't do anything about it. He blocked as much as he could, and he still took lethal. So, Franco is a very good card. He is vital to any goblin deck, honestly. Arms Dealer, 3-drop red, Goblin Rogue, 1/1. States you may pay 1 and a red and sacrifice a goblin. Arms Dealer will then do 4 damage to target creature. Pretty useful for using some of your extra goblin tokens to get rid of some of those pesky creatures that just aren't going to block you. Raid Bombardment. This is another very, very important card to the deck. 3-drop red enchantment. Whenever a creature you control with power 2 or less attacks, Raid Bombardment deals 1 damage to defending player. Now this does kind of run counterintuitive to our previous strategies of buffing our goblins up. However, a lot of the times you're either going to get one or the other. You're not really going to run into both. So it's not going to be that big a deal if you already have if you already have, you know, your Quest for the Goblin Lord or your Goblin Oriflame beefing up your goblins, then, you know, you're not going to be too upset that you can't play Raid Bombardment, or that Raid Bombardment won't trigger. Cleaver Riot, 5-drop red. Creatures you control gain double strike until end of turn. This actually would be a good card to play in tandem with Raid Bombardment because it's not going to increase their power, it's just going to increase their output. So, it's kind of a tricky workaround. Gutter Snipe. We've got a beautiful promo here. 3-drop red. Picked this up from my local game store Gameplay in Clarkston, Washington. Shout out to Gameplay. Looks like it's a 25-year anniversary promo. It's got the little gem right here, and it will not focus. That's alright, you can kind of see it. It's a 2/2 Goblin Shaman. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, Gutter Snipe deals 2 damage to each opponent. You're not, at least I'm not, in this deck, running a whole lot of instants and sorceries. Gutter Snipe usually goes in more of like a Magecraft kind of build, or a Prowess build, or whatever you want to call it, where you run instants and sorceries, usually blue-red decks. But in this particular instance, he's kind of just in there as a way to get a little extra bang for your buck when you are playing those instants and sorceries. There's a few of them in the deck. The interaction might not ever happen, but if you can think of a better goblin, let me know. Bogart Shenanigans. This is going to be another one of those cards that kind of punishes your opponent for allowing you to build up an army. It's a 3-drop tribal enchantment goblin, so this does count as a goblin spell. If you want to use Goblin Matron to go grab this, you can. Whenever another goblin you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you may have Bogart Shenanigans deal 1 damage to target player. So it makes your opponent really have to think before they board wipe or do a bunch of chump blocking, because those goblins are still going to leak some damage through, even if they die. Mog War Marshall. Got the updated Eternal Masters print art. Looks a lot better than the old one. 2-drop red, Goblin Warrior, 1/1 with Echo cost, 1 and a red. When Mog War Marshall enters the battlefield or dies, put a 1/1 red Goblin creature token onto the battlefield. You're almost never going to pay the Echo cost, because it's just going to die and give you another 1/1. So there's not really much reason to keep it around, unless you plan on using some recursion to blink it and bring it back, but that's not really happening with this deck. We've got Hoardling Outburst, 3-drop double red. I believe it's an F&M promo. Sorcery speed, put 3 red goblin creatures onto the battlefield. Goblin Instigator, 2-drop red, Goblin Rogue 1/1, enters the battlefield with an accountability buddy in the form of a 1/1 Goblin creature token. Reckless One, one of the beefy boys. 4-drop red, Goblin Avatar with haste, and Reckless One's power and toughness are each equal to the number of goblins in play. It's going to be an immediate threat. Maybe take some of the aggro off of some of the other bigger pieces that are more important, like Muxus or Franco. Goblin Tunneler, 2-drop red, 1/1 Goblin Rogue. Tap it to make target creature with power 2 or less unblockable for the turn. I do believe that you have to be careful with that one, because you can't do any kind of like workaround loophole hijinks with that. As soon as your creature's power grows above 2, it will lose the text that states it is unblockable, so it will no longer be unblockable. It's kind of like a state-based ability. It has to remain under 2 power in order for it to be unblockable. As far as I know, I could be wrong. Conspicuous Snoop, 2-drop red, double red, Goblin Rogue 2/2, play with the top card of your library revealed. You may cast goblin spells from the top of your library, and as long as the top card of your library is a goblin card, Conspicuous Snoop has all activated abilities of that card. Can be pretty useful, depending on which goblin it is sitting on the top. Also just good for if you've got extra mana, just casting everything that you have available to you. 3-drop red, Pashalik Mons. Legendary creature Goblin Warrior, 2/2, Patch-like Bonds. Whenever Patch-like Bonds or another goblin you control dies, Patch-like Bonds deals 1 damage to any target. So another one of those Bogart Shenanigans kind of cards. And you may pay 3 and a red, for a total of 4 CMC, to sacrifice a goblin and create 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. Not a lot of situations where you would want to be doing that, unless you're trying to take advantage of his dealt damage to generate more damage. Coat of Arms. This is a nasty one. 5-drop artifact. Each creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield that shares at least one creature type with it. If I'm not mistaken, the way this works is ultimately, as long as you know each creature that you control is the same type, you effectively count how many there are and do -1, and that's the buff that every one of them gets. It's pretty brutal. Goblin Ringleader, 4-drop, red, Goblin Tutu with haste. When Goblin Ringleader enters the battlefield, reveal the top 4 cards of your library, put all goblins revealed this way into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. There's kind of like one of those creatures for, I think, like each of the like major supported tribal types. So for like for humans, I think that was kind of Militia Bugler. He doesn't grab all of them, he just grabs the one, so, you know, white sucks, the meme continues. For goblins, we've got Goblin Ringleader. For elves, I believe you have Sylvan Messenger. For merfolk, you have, I think it's Title Courier. And I don't know if there's a zombie or vampire one, but that's because I don't have a zombie or vampire deck yet. Someday, we'll get around to it. Goblin Chieftain, a classic Goblin Lord, 3-drop double red. 2/2 Goblin with haste. Other Goblin creatures you control get +1/+1 and have haste. He has his own haste, gives +1. What's not to love? Outrage Shaman. It's a 5-drop double red Goblin Shaman with 2/2 and Chroma. When Outrage Shaman enters the When Outrage Shaman comes into play, it deals damage to target creature equal to the number of red mana symbols in the mana costs of permanents you control. It's kind of like a devotion before devotion. So, yeah, you just kind of count the devotion to red, and then that's how much damage you're dealing. Proto-devotion. Horde of Bogarts. 4-drop red Goblin creature. Star. Horde of Bogarts' power and toughness are each equal to the number of red permanents you control. Horde of Bogarts can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. Basically has Proto-Menace. It's funny that like so many abilities or, you know, key phrases have always kind of had their place in Magic, but only recently became like evergreen text or whatever. Evergreen abilities, I guess is what they call them. Squee Goblin Dabob. He is a 3-drop, 1 red, 1/1 legendary creature goblin. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may return Squee Goblin Dabob from your graveyard to your hand. He's pretty much in here just to make sure you always have a goblin. Even if your opponent is milling you and discarding you and shit like that, you can always rest assured Squee's gonna come back. You always have that goblin. Speaking of goblins, Bushwhacker, Goblin Bushwhacker. Yes, it is a Bushwhacker. It says Bushwhacker on it, so not just saying weird words. It's actually its name. 1-drop red Goblin Warrior, 1/1 with a kicker of 1 red. When it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, creatures you control get +1 and gain haste until the end of turn. Pretty useful early on. Franco's Enforcer is a 3-drop double red 2/2 with Intimidate. Intimidate just means that the creature can't be blocked except by artifacts or creatures that share a color with it. Gem Palm Incinerator, the art that came with the Goblins vs. Merfolk deck. Cycling 1 and a red. It is a 2/1 goblin, and when you cycle it, you may have it deal X damage to target creature, where X is the number of goblins you have on the battlefield. So, once again, another goblin that's ultimately just a burn spell. Goblin Arsonist. It's a 1-drop red Goblin Shaman, 1/1. When it dies, you may have it deal 1 damage to target creature or player. Very useful. Prime target for Skirk Prospector, because you'll get your mana and then you can send a damage. Goblin Glory Chaser, Goblin Warrior 1/1. With Renown 1, when it deals combat damage to a player if it's renowned. If it isn't renowned, you put a 1/1 counter on it. As long as it is renowned, it has Menace, which will make it a lot easier for it to get in that damage. Goblin Rabblemaster. I believe this is an F&M promo. 3-drop red Goblin Warrior 2/2. Other goblin creatures you control attack each turn if able. That sucks, but he kind of makes up for it. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a 1/1 red goblin creature token with haste onto the battlefield. Whenever Goblin Rabblemaster attacks, it gets +1/+0 until the end of turn for each attacking goblin. You really want to make sure you play him at the right time. You don't want to just play him because you have him and you have the mana. You want to hold off, keep him in your hand, and play him when your goblins are big, beefy, and ready to go. Or when there's a lot of them. Spikeshot Elder. 1-drop red, 1/1, Goblin Shaman. You can pay 3, including 2 red, and Spikeshot Elder will deal damage equal to its power to target creature or player. Another kill spell goblin, but he has that as an activated ability. He would be one of those creatures where you really want to get Aura Flame out, and you really want to get... Actually, Aura Flame wouldn't really matter. Yes, it would, actually, because it's not a tap ability, so you could activate it while he's attacking. So Aura Flame, Quest for the Goblin Lord, any of the Lords, anything you want to do to pump him up, it's all going to be worth it. Deal sneeze coming on, hold on. Goblin Slide, 3-drop red, enchantment. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may pay 1. If you do, put a goblin creature token with haste on the battlefield. Just an extra way to use up any extra mana you might have and get some goblins out of it. Goblin King, 3-drop double red, Goblin 2/2. Other goblins you control have 1/1 and Mountain Walk. Actually, it's not that you control, it is just other goblin creatures. So be careful if you're playing a mirror match, because that could fuck you over too. It will fuck you over too. At least it'll fuck me over, because this is my deck. Relentless Assault. This is a 4-drop double red sorcery. Untap all creatures that attack this turn. After the main phase, there is an additional combat phase, followed by an additional main phase. Very powerful card. Any card that gives you an additional combat phase is serious business. Goblin War Party, 4-drop red, sorcery. Choose 1. Create 3 red. Wow. 3 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, or creatures you control get +1/+1, gain haste until the end of turn. You may pay an additional 3, including a red, to entwine that choice, allowing you to choose both. So, if you wanted to use both, you would be paying set, including 2 red. for 3 goblins that have +1/+1 in haste. Probably wouldn't entwine it unless it's a very late game play and you just have the mana. Otherwise, I'd probably just get the goblin drops unless you're swinging in for lethal. Ruby Medallion, 2-drop artifact. Red spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. If anyone's wondering right now and has watched previous episodes of this series, yes, that is the second medallion of the Tempest Medallion set so far. And spoiler alert, I do have all of them. There is one of them in each of my tribal decks. The Jet Medallion is not really in a tribal deck or a traditional tribal deck per se, because the tribal deck that it is in is not a common one, at least. You know, we've got Goblin, Merfolk, Elves, and Humans are all pretty common tribes. But my black tribe is not one of the traditional ones, which you may have already guessed by the fact that I said I don't have a vampire deck and I don't have a zombie deck. Yet. If anyone wants to donate one to me, that'd be great. I would love to just have something to start with. Even just a really crappy zombie or vampire deck to start with. Just something to build off of. I don't even have anything right now. 2-drop, 1 red, Goblin Diplomats. It's a 2/1 goblin with each creature attacks this turn if able. A great way to bait your opponent out. It's not even baiting, you're forcing them. So that you can get in past their blockers that might otherwise be too big for your goblins to handle. Goblin Burrows. You can tap it to add 1 to your mana pool, or you can pay 2 and target goblin creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. It might be great for something like Spike Shot Elder. Alright, the Mac Daddy of the deck, quite possibly the best goblin ever printed, Skirk Prospector. I've got mine in foil. He is a 1-drop red goblin with 1/1, and he states, sacrifice a goblin, add a red. You are going to more than likely have plenty of goblin tokens to work with if this deck is working the way it's intended, which means that you will basically be able to take multiple turns just by using Skirk Prospector to sacrifice goblins and continue playing spells. Bogart Brute, 3-drop, 1 red, Goblin Warrior with Menace on a body of 3/2. Pretty decent, chunky goblin. We're getting some nice chip damage in. Dragon Fodder, 2-drop red, sorcery, put 2 1/1 goblin creature tokens on the battlefield. She's Gang Commander, 5-drop double red, goblin with a body of 2/2. When Siege Gang Commander enters the battlefield, create 3 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, and you may pay 2, including a red, and sacrifice a goblin to have Siege Gang Commander deal 2 damage to any target. A really good card, honestly. Just being a 5-drop that enters with 3 goblins on a body of 2/2 is already value right there. Another one of the best goblins to be printed, Goblin Warchief, the updated Dominaria art. 3-drop double red, 2/2. Goblin spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and goblins you control have haste. Really glad they added that one to Modern. Not that I play Modern anymore. Well, I don't know. We'll see once COVID stops being as prevalent and we can start going back to our LGSs. I might still play Modern. I don't know. It's going to depend on how much weekend support Modern gets. Kindred Charge, 6-drop, 2 red, sorcery. Choose a creature type. For each creature you control of the chosen type, create a token that's a copy of that creature. those tokens gain haste, exile them at the beginning of the next end step. This should end the game, if you play it at the right time. If not, it'll set you up to have the best board state. This is going to be another one of those things I'm just going to mention now. If you are very perceptive and keen-eyed, you might have noticed that in my Sledder deck I had the Kindred Boon card, the white version of this. And you might be thinking, based on the Tempest gems, does he have all of these? Yes, I do. So, look forward to seeing those in the respective decks that those are in upcoming episodes. Goblin Sledder, 1-drop red goblin with body of 1/1. You may sacrifice a goblin to give target creature +1/+1 until end of turn. That would be if you want to go tall instead of going wide, and you happen to have the resources to do it. Franco, 10th Street Kingpin, 3-drop red, legendary creature goblin, on a body of 1/2. So he got a little bit weaker over time, I suppose. Whenever Franco, 10th Street Kingpin attacks, put a 1/1 counter on it, then create a number of 1/1 red goblin creatures equal to Franco's power. Could get pretty stupid, but he is significantly less good than his mob boss counterpart. Goblin Ringleader, 4-drop red goblin with Tutu and haste. When it enters the battlefield, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Put all goblin cards revealed this way into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. I guess goblins have 2 of these guys. 'Cause... give me just a sec. I mean, this one does have haste. So I guess he... no, because the other one has haste too. Pretty sure. Where was he? Am I losing it? Goblin Ringleader. Also a 4-drop, also a 2/2, also a goblin, also has haste. Oh my lord. This is live on camera. I'm an idiot. I genuinely thought these are 2 separate cards. They are not. They are the exact same card. So, I will need to be removing this one. That's exciting. Get to throw another slot in there. But hey, my commander deck was illegal, if that's fun. Oof. Make sure you only have 1 copy of every card in your deck. Don't let that happen to you. That's embarrassing. That's super embarrassing. While I'm recording a video, too. Yikes. Alright, where were we? Oh, looks like we only have 2 left. Cool. It'll give me a chance to swap that card out. This is one of my absolute favorite goblins of all time, in Brash Taunter. Got the extended art here, 5-drop red, 1/1. He's indestructible, which is insane for a goblin. Whenever Brash Taunter is dealt damage, deals that much damage to target opponent, and you can pay 3, including a red. Brash Taunter fights another target creature. This one's great because a lot of the times what you'll do is you will leave him up as a block and block an opponent and deal damage to that, or have that creature deal damage to Brash Taunter, and have him deal damage to the opponent. And then if you have the mana floating, or open, rather, you can tap it and just do it again. So if they swing in with a really big creature and they're not paying attention to this, you could potentially kill them if the creature is big enough. This is also an absolute game changer when it comes to dealing with Phyrexian Obliterator. No, it's not. I'm thinking of a totally different card. Never mind that. Don't use this against Phyrexian Obliterator. You're gonna regret it. I mean, it'll kill Phyrexian Obliterator. No, it won't. Don't use it against Phyrexian Obliterator. Fuck Phyrexian Obliterator while I'm at it. Card is nonsense. So this card is not a second copy. It is an entirely different, unique card in Squee the Immortal. 3-drop double red, legendary creature goblin. He is a 2/1. You may cast Squee the Immortal from your graveyard or from exile. This is one of the only cards in Magic history that you can play from exile. Like, that isn't part of another card's ability. So, that's fun. Also, again, just being able to get a goblin out of the grave. Very cool. Alright, well, that does it for goblins. I will have to swap out one of those cards. Throw something else in there. So, that's fun. Stay tuned for tomorrow's episode.